to do the binding. And the binding really is just more decorative than anything else. I'm going to make a series of X's on the back of my cover, and I chose this purple thread because I wanted it to go with my artwork that I had prepared for my cover, and I just thought the purple looked really cute. You will need a straight needle, and just one that's large enough for your thread to fit through. This is a tapestry needle, so it has a nice blunt point, so I am less likely to poke myself with it. And I usually measure my thread in terms of the book length. So for this project, I think I will go with about 4 lengths of thread plus some for tying off. So let me say 5 to be safe. We'll see how that works out. So I'm going to start on the outside of the book. I'm going to come through my top hole and then come back through the hole directly opposite of it. So just to show you what I just did. Just created a line on the inside and the 2 threads coming out on the outside. And I'm lining up the 2 ends of my thread, and then I'm going to pull this so that I have my thread centered. Then I'm going to set the one side over. If you want just to be extra safe, you can take a little piece of tape and go ahead and temporarily secure that to the inside, and that's just so that this doesn't shift around on me as I'm doing this. So I'm creating X's on the outside, and I'll have a series of lines on the inside. So I'm just going to weave in and out through these. I'm creating sort of like a Z shape. So I'm going across, and then I'm going to create a straight across on the inside. So that's the Z. And then diagonally down again. And then straight across, and then diagonally down, and you just zigzag your way through the binding like that. Just going to give myself a little extra thread here. Until I get to the bottom hole, and then I'm going to stop, and I'm going to remove my needle and rethread it on the other side. You might need to trim this a little bit. My end is a tiny bit frayed, so let me just trim that off. And I'm going to repeat the same process except going in the other direction on this side. So making my crisscross on the outside and going back across on the inside. So you're going to have 2 lines here, just a double thread. Across on the inside. And diagonally down on the outside. See if I can find that hole. Nope. across on the inside. And that's my last stitch. And then all I need to do is tie it off. So I just want to take a look at this. Again, this is mainly decorative. It will provide a little bit of security to keep your covers from separating from your binding, or your spine, I should say. But that's basically it. We're not holding any papers in place with this. We're just holding the cover to the spine, and we're adding a little bit of decorative interest. So you can take your needle off at this point, pull everything nice and tight, and then you're going to do a square knot. So you're going to do, I do right over left, pull it nice and tight, and then left over right, keeping that tight. And then you can just go ahead and snip that off. And carefully take this off. Hopefully it's not going to rip my binding here. Or keep calling it a binding. Hopefully it's not going to rip my spine support. So there is my little folder. Here's the signature I pulled from my original journal. It's quite a bit bigger than this journal, but it works in the same way. It's got a variety of papers that are stitched together down the center, and the way it works is you just slide it under the elastic into your journal. So I will show you how I put this together for your journal. The way you're going to size your paper is you're going to measure your finished height. In my case it's 10, and that is what you want the height of your paper to be. So this dimension up and down should be 10 inches, or whatever your journal is. And then you want to measure one side of it. So mine it ended up being 10 by 10, which I love. I love square journals. I'm not sure why, it's just sort of a thing that I have. So mine is 10 by 10, and again, I'm measuring just from the edge of this spine that we created. So my paper size will need to be 10 inches high by 20 inches wide. You need to have double the width of one of your cover sides. And so you're going to need to find paper that's a minimum of 10 inches in one direction and 20 inches in the other direction. And then you trim them all down, and you will stitch them in the center and create your little signatures. I'm going to create a little signature for this book just to show you how everything comes together. I have a variety of papers here. I have the tissue paper that they use when they pack up like breakables at the store. I have tissue paper that I use for gift giving. I have a paper bag, just a regular big paper bag from a grocery store. And I have some drawing paper here that is not quite the dimension that I wanted. It's 12 inches, which is fine, but it's only 18 inches long. But you can also go ahead and use something a little bit smaller in the length, because that will fit as well. So I'm going to show you, I'm going to take a couple of these and I'll show you what you can do with it. Now you can use a pair of scissors, that's always an option. You can fold this first down the center, because that, if you remember, this was my 18-inch dimension, so I'm going to use that as my fold line. And then I just need to cut the height, which was 10 inches. So, and I might go a tiny bit smaller. I think it was just a hair smaller, so. And just want to grab my journal and check to make sure that this fits. Oh, you know what? Something I forgot to take into account. Now, the height of my cover is 10 inches, but really I'm limited by the space between the pins I put on here. So really I can only get, because remember my rubber band is going to be running between these pins. So I can only get, let me measure that. Let's say 9 inches in height for this particular book. So hopefully 9 inches will work. So let me go ahead and trim another inch off this. I'm glad I checked and didn't go and cut all my papers the wrong dimension. I'm going to go 8 3/4 just to be safe. Again, this is completely dependent on the paper, the bag that you used when you created your journal. So let me just see how that fits. Okay, so that's fine. If I have my elastic there, that will fit nicely between those pins. So 9 3/4 it is. And you can see it doesn't extend. It doesn't stick further out than my cover, which is, that's all I really care about in terms of any of these dimensions, really. It just has to fit inside here. So this fits inside. That's perfect. Let me go on to my next type of paper. So for my paper bag, let's see, I need a 20-inch dimension, and if I go just from that's 16 inches, so you could do, you know, one of these per side, and then again, it's going to be slightly smaller. It's not going to be the full depth of that book. But you know what? It's going to be close. So that's what I'm going to do. I don't want to waste a lot of paper. I mean, that's the whole idea here, is to reuse and recycle, and that's what we're doing. So I'm going to cut as neatly as I can, but not getting too stressed out over this. This is a smash journal. So I'll cut that. I'm not going to cut the other side right now. Let me just cut around this edge. I want to get rid of all this stuff. I'm just going to open this up. Just cut this really sloppily. Get rid of this inner stuff. Cut right into the corners there. Just so I can flatten this out. It just makes it a lot easier to cut. And I apologize, I know I'm off camera here. I think I'm off camera. Look, I think this is so funny. It has reuse this bag, book covers, packaging, crafts, wrapping paper, help keep produce fresh. So it doesn't say for your junk journal, but I think this qualifies as a really good use for this paper. Okay, so I'm trying to get this straight, but again, I'm not. Just want to get rid of this bottom flap that has all the glue and stuff on it, and expose that end. And you can use your paper cutter. You can fold this over and stick it in your paper cutter if you want. Your paper trimmer. Really, as long as you cut into those corners, makes it a whole lot easier to do this. So I'll show you how you could use your paper trimmer with this and if you want, you can go ahead and you can fold along some of those folds that were already there. You just need to make this fit in your paper trimmer like this. And line up your folded edge, get this as close as to the end as possible. And let's see, am I straight? I'm not sure if this will go all the way through. Oh, it did. Okay, so now I have a nice clean edge. And now you can make this into your fill paper. So remember the dimension. Actually, I forget the dimension already. I think it was 9 3/4. Is that what I ended up doing? 8 3/4. Okay, so 8 3/4 is one dimension, and this is 15, about 16 inches. If I wanted to go 8 inches, being a little short on this, I could cut straight across the middle and then divide this into signatures. And let me just measure how long this is. I just got my tape measure. I just want to see how long this is. 30, it's a little bit bigger than 36 inches. So if I'm cutting 20 inches, yeah, I think I'll do that. I'll cut that in half. It'll be a little bit short, but all I'm going to do is I'll just go ahead and fold this in half. Which is almost on a fold line. And then my height, I'm just going to cut in half too. So it's going to be a little bit shy in both directions, but it'll still work. Just trying to figure out how I put this inside my paper trimmer. So I'm going to fold this in half this way, because that's how my signature is going to be sized. And fold it in half this way so all my edges line up. I don't have to fold it all the way, but just make sure I have my line marked here. So that's approximately where my line is, in the center. You know what? This would be so much easier with scissors. I was going to try to fit it into my paper cutter, but this is such an easy cut for me that I'm not going to worry about that. So I just cut it in half, and I'm going to cut it in half again. My pages will be a little bit short, but I am using practically the entire bag. So I'm going to fold this in half, and just to make it easier for trimming, for cutting. That's why I only have to cut half the length. And I'm going up that line that I created when I folded it. I hope that was the line I created when I folded it. Yes, it was. Okay, I didn't fold this. So I'm going to go ahead and fold this. Now, this might be a little confusing because I'm using a bag that's a certain dimension. You're not necessarily going to have a bag that's the exact dimension as mine. And I'm just showing you how, just some easy ways to work with big pieces of paper and make it a little bit more manageable. And, ways to sort of adapt different sizes to fit in your journal. And show you how it's not really important how perfect everything is, especially for this one. So look at all that paper I got from that one bag. 1, 2, 3, 4. So there's 4 pieces here, and I used that entire bag practically. And these can be mixed in with my drawing paper, and then I can go ahead and work some tissue paper into the mix. So let me grab a piece of tissue paper. I have this crinkled and ripped tissue paper. I'm just going to use one side of it. And let me get the measurement. So this is almost 20 inches. How do you like that? Okay, so I am going to now cut, I'm going to keep this dimension and I'm going to cut as many 8 3/4 inch slices out of this as I can. So most likely I'm going to end up with 2. I'm going to just fold this in half so it fits inside my trimmer. I am going to use my trimmer for this because it's sitting right here, and why not? Okay. So 8 3/4. Whoa! Maybe this isn't a good way to cut this, huh? There, I have a torn edge there. That's okay. And I think what I will do is maybe cut this. I'm not going to worry about that. That's fine. The thing is, the more ripped up and this is when you're starting, the more kind of crinkled and ripped it is when you start, the less fear you're going to have when you're doing anything to it. It's like it's kind of already ruined. You can't ruin it with anything that you do to it. It's just stuff that was headed for the trash, the landfill. Okay, so I think that's enough for my signature. I have varying lengths. They're all very similar in height, but let me just show you how they would fit inside my journal. Just like that. Okay, and I have all these really cool, interesting papers to work with and play with, and there's some words already on here that you could work into your design maybe, so that's a lot of fun. And you don't even have to have all your papers together. I'm going to mix these around, and then I'm going to get my my binding stuff out, and I'll be right back. I sort of distributed my paper a little bit. I've tried to center it as much as I can, top to bottom, and I've got all my little edges lined up, and that's really the most important thing, is that the center fold is lined up on all of them. And then I'm just going to take a little binder clip, just to keep everything in place so it doesn't shift around on me. It's a little tricky when you're working with multiple sizes and types of paper here. So like for example, that didn't get clipped because it's so much smaller than the papers around it. So just have to be careful to get everything. I might have to get one of my bigger binder clips here, but let's see if I can get this to grab it. Yeah, that kind of grabs it. Okay. It's good for what we're doing. All right, so since this is a junk journal, I'm not going to make a little template for this. I'm just going to measure and mark right onto my center paper. And since they are, well, my smallest one is the one in the middle, and I did that intentionally so that I wouldn't miss that with one of the binding holes. So I need to grab my needle tool. I'll be right back. Okay, got my little needle tool. I have a ruler, a pencil, and my signature. And my center dimension that I'm going to focus on is about 8 inches. So what I'm going to do is get this approximately centered in this area. I'm not going to worry about getting perfect. And I'm going to mark every inch. And what I'm going to do is something called a pamphlet stitch here. Really simple. While I'm over here, let me just push this into the corner and mark that so I can see it more clearly. And I have an old phone book that I use for punching my signature, so I'll grab that. And I will just find a spot in here to sort of tuck that in. It just helps me line everything up in that corner and get my holes in, especially when I'm working with a bunch of different papers here. So I'm not exactly on the line, but I am on the fold, and that's the important part. Making sure that I went all the way through and I see all of those holes here, so that is great. Now I'm ready for my stitch. In this type of a binding, in this type of a book, we are going to stitch the signature, which is the packet of paper basically. We're going to stitch that separate from the cover. And what that allows us to do is swap it out. So once you use all these papers up, you can pull the entire signature or the entire bundle out and then put a new one in. You can also stack multiple signatures in this journal that we made. I made it large enough that where I could fit, we could probably fit, I don't know, probably at least 5 to 10 of these should fit in there because I made a nice wide spine. Alright, so grabbing the needle again, I am just going to thread enough to go, basically we're going to kind of zigzag in and out these holes to the top and then back to the bottom again. So all I really need to cover that distance is 2 lengths. So if I'm just measuring just very loosely, 1 and then 2, and then I'm going to need enough to tie it off at the very end. So I'm going to give myself another length. 3 lengths isn't very much. And I'm using the same purple thread that I used on the outside just to coordinate and make it easier. There's no need to have 2 different colors here if you don't want. Alright, so on a pamphlet stitch, I don't start at the top or the bottom. I usually like to start somewhere near the middle because that's where I'm going to end up tying it off. So I'm going to start right in the middle. And I'm going to bring it through from the inside to out, and I'm going to hold on to this thread. I just need to leave enough to tie off, so about half that length. I'm just going to hold with my finger, and then I'm just going to start moving my way up the spine through the holes I already created. Right, until this is tight. Out. And then back in again. The coming back in is the trickier of the 2 moves here because you're sort of going against that fold. Alright, and once you get to the top, that's my last hole, you're just going to reverse direction. You're going to now head back down again. So what you'll see happening is that it starts to fill in all those little spaces. Now I'm going to end up right there. Through this hole. There are a couple of different ways you can do this. I think this is the easiest way. For this type of a binding. So there's a few ways you can do this. There's a few ways you can tie it off. I'm just going to tie mine off with on this one with a square knot on the inside. So what I'm going to do is right over left, and then left over right. And before I snug it up, let me just grab my needle tool and kind of tighten everything up on that lower knot as best as I can. There we go. It's your square knot, and you can either leave a little bit extra and tuck that under, or you can cut it really short, whatever you prefer. And now I can just take my little clips off. And there is my signature. Now let me grab my cover, and I'll grab a rubber band because that's all ready to go. I'll wrap it around my little posts. And I haven't really tightened my posts. You can tighten them down completely to the bottom at this point because once your rubber band's in. But you want to open your signature up to the center. I'm going to slide it under both these rubber bands. You could just slide it under one and slide another signature under the other one if you wanted to. Just getting it in here and situated is really the only tricky part. And actually, with the way I designed this, you could just lay this in place and then just, that's probably a much easier way to do it. You lay your signature in place and then you put your rubber band around it. So how do you like that for easy? So super easy. And there is your journal, and it's got a little handle here so you can hold it by the handle, or you can kind of create a little closure with it. I don't know, you can probably get really, really creative with this, but the really nice thing about this is now there's no fear. You can scribble in this, you can splash paint in this, you can draw to your heart's content, and when you're all done with this, you can pull it out and replace it with another signature using whatever papers you want in that signature. You can put watercolor paper in there. I've gone ahead and attached my sugar skull to the cover. I love it because it has so much texture, the combination of the paper and that raised paint, so it's a lot of fun. And here are my signatures waiting for me to get in there and just kind of play. And just want to show you the back, the exposed binding, I guess you could call that, even though it's not really. And there's a whole other side to decorate here. So this project was a lot of fun. I hope you enjoyed it, and check out the next one. For more information on this project and others, check out my website at bluequarry.com.